To those who dare to look beyond the surface of reality, an unseen world emerges, not one dictated by physics alone, but by forces older than time itself, embedded in the very essence of human perception. This is the realm of the magician, the one who understands that what we call reality is but a fraction of what truly exists. This world belongs to the magician, the seeker of hidden truths, the master of unseen forces, the one who understands that reality is far more malleable than it appears. Throughout history, this figure has captivated the imagination of humanity, appearing in ancient myths, medieval legends, Renaissance philosophy, and modern storytelling. From the shaman whispering secrets to the spirits, to the court alchemist deciphering the mysteries of nature, the magician has always occupied the space between the known and the unknown, the mundane and the miraculous. His wisdom is not merely knowledge, it is transformation, the ability to alter not just the external world, but the mind itself. The magician is not confined to myth or legend. He is present wherever boundaries are broken, wherever the known dissolves into the unknown. Whether it's a scientist uncovering hidden laws of nature, an artist revealing unseen dimensions of thought, or a philosopher challenging the very structure of reality, the magician's influence resonates far beyond the past. He is an active force in shaping the present and the future. He is the philosopher, the scientist, the artist, the mystic. He embodies the endless pursuit of understanding, reminding us that what we perceive as reality may only be a shadow of something far greater. But there is a danger in wielding such power. For every sage who seeks wisdom, there is a sorcerer consumed by his own ambition. The magician's knowledge can heal or corrupt, illuminate or deceive. The line between enlightenment and delusion is razor thin, and those who walk this path must tread carefully. What is the essence of this archetype? Why does he persist in every culture, across every era, manifesting in different forms, yet always carrying the same aura of mystery? To understand the magician is to understand the very nature of transformation, both in the world and within ourselves. In this journey, we will explore the origins of the magician, the wisdom he possesses, the forces he commands, and the shadows he casts. From the cryptic riddles of Hermes Trismegistus to the cosmic secrets of Jung's archetypes, from the mystical alchemy of the ancients to the scientific revolutions of the modern world, we will uncover the truth behind this eternal figure. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, the magician is always present, guiding, questioning, challenging. The real question is, will we be the ones to unlock his secrets, or will we be forever trapped in the illusions he weaves? From the earliest whispers of civilization, the magician has occupied a unique position in the human imagination, a figure both revered and feared, existing at the boundary between the material and the mystical. He is neither warrior nor king, yet his influence shapes the destiny of nations. He does not lead armies, yet rulers seek his counsel. His power is not measured in wealth or territory, but in something far more elusive: knowledge. Across cultures, this archetype manifests in myriad forms, each embodying a different facet of the magician's essence. In the Arthurian cycle, Merlin serves as the enigmatic guide to King Arthur, wielding foresight and sorcery to shape the fate of Camelot. Unlike the knights bound by chivalric codes, Merlin operates outside the rigid structure of society, bridging the ancient wisdom of the Druids with the emerging ideals of medieval Christendom. His presence is both a blessing and a warning. Those who heed his advice prosper, while those who ignore him fall into ruin. The Norse tradition presents another aspect of the magician in Odin, the All-Father who willingly sacrifices his own eye at Mimir's well to gain wisdom. Unlike the passive gods of distant heavens, Odin is relentless in his pursuit of knowledge, venturing into the unknown, embracing suffering, and even deceiving others when necessary. His mastery extends beyond physical battle. He commands the runes, symbols of hidden truth, unlocking the fundamental forces of reality itself. In ancient Egypt, the god Thoth assumes the role of divine magician, credited with the invention of writing, mathematics, and the sacred rituals that govern the cosmos. As the scribe of the gods, he is the bridge between the mortal and the immortal, ensuring that the knowledge of creation is preserved and understood. Unlike Merlin or Odin, Thoth is not a manipulator of fate, but a guardian of equilibrium, embodying the balance between order and chaos. Even outside mythology, the magician persists. The Taoist sage of ancient China seeks harmony with the Tao, manipulating the unseen energies of existence through practices that blur the line between philosophy and magic. The Vedic rishis of India, immersed in meditation, receive sacred hymns that shape reality itself. The shamans of indigenous cultures enter trance states, communicating with spirits, healing the sick, and uncovering the secrets of the natural world. What unites all these figures is their role as intermediaries, conduits of knowledge that transcends human limitations. Yet they are not mere scholars. Their wisdom is active, transformative. They do not merely learn the secrets of the universe. They use them, often in ways that defy conventional morality. Their actions are not bound by the ethics of common men, for they operate on a different plane, seeing beyond what others perceive. But such power does not come without cost. The magician often stands alone, misunderstood, distrusted. Merlin is ultimately imprisoned by his own apprentice, Nimue. Odin, despite his wisdom, cannot escape the prophesied end of Ragnarok. The Taoist master may attain immortality, but only by severing all ties to earthly existence. The path of the magician is never easy. It demands sacrifice, isolation, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. As we move forward, we must ask, why does this figure endure? Why does every civilization across time and geography give birth to a magician archetype? The answer lies not in history alone, but in something deeper, something encoded within the very psyche of humanity. Because the magician is not just a figure of myth, he is a reflection of something within us all. The magician stands apart from the structures of power, yet his presence within them is undeniable. Kings consult him, warriors seek his counsel, and entire civilizations have depended on his wisdom. He is not the ruler nor the soldier, but something far more ambiguous, a force that influences without governing, shapes without commanding. His power does not come from lineage, wealth, or conquest. Instead, it is drawn from knowledge, secrets hidden from the ordinary mind, insights that shift the very course of history. Historically, rulers have both revered and feared the magician's influence. In the court of pharaohs, high priests wielded their esoteric knowledge to legitimize divine rule, interpreting omens, controlling sacred rituals, and ensuring that the cosmic order, or Ma'at, remained intact. In the East, Imperial China's scholar bureaucrats combined political strategy with mystical Taoist principles, balancing statecraft with the unseen forces of nature. The oracles of Greece, particularly at Delphi, whispered the fates of kings, their words shaping the ambitions of conquerors and the rise and fall of empires. But the magician's relationship with power is never straightforward. While some serve as trusted advisors, others become adversaries, voices that challenge authority rather than reinforce it. Nostradamus, the famed seer of the French court, lived under both royal protection and scrutiny, his cryptic prophecies interpreted as either divine foresight or dangerous subversion. John Dee, the magician scholar of Queen Elizabeth I, was both a guiding intellect and a man whose dealings with the occult branded him as a potential heretic. Even Merlin, perhaps the most famous magician of all, found himself at odds with the very kingdom he helped create, retreating from civilization as his warnings went unheeded. The magician's power is not one of dominion, but of disruption. He does not conquer with force nor command through fear. Instead, he rewrites the invisible scripts that shape perception, unraveling illusions and challenging the very foundations of belief. He operates from the shadows, working through subtle influence rather than direct action. Unlike the warrior who enforces the law or the king who dictates it, the magician is concerned with something beyond governance, the pursuit of wisdom itself. Yet wisdom and power are uneasy companions. Knowledge can be a source of stability, but it can also be a threat. A ruler who listens too closely to the magician risks becoming dependent, his strength undermined by excessive reliance on hidden knowledge. But a ruler who ignores him entirely risks stagnation, blinded by the illusion of his own invincibility. Many of history's greatest leaders have walked this fine line, carefully managing the magician's presence at their side. Julius Caesar, despite his military genius, never ignored the warnings of seers. His infamous assassination on the Ides of March was foretold, yet disregarded at the moment when it mattered most. Napoleon, too, consulted mystics and numerologists, believing in the power of fate even as he sought to reshape it. In contrast, those who dismissed the magician's wisdom outright, whether through arrogance or fear, often met swift downfall. The magician represents something rulers cannot control: the unknown, the unpredictable, the forces beyond human authority. But what happens when the magician himself seeks to wield power? History offers cautionary tales. Those who step beyond the role of advisor often find themselves consumed by the very forces they once manipulated. Rasputin, the mystic who ensnared the Russian royal family, became a symbol of unchecked influence, his demise mirroring the empire's collapse. Aleister Crowley, a self-proclaimed magician, sought to create a new spiritual order, yet found himself descending into personal ruin. Even figures of legend, like Faust, serve as warnings. A magician who craves dominion over reality risks losing his very soul. The magician must remain in balance, neither a servant to power nor a ruler in his own right. His role is that of the watcher, the guide, the unseen hand that steers fate while avoiding its direct grasp. Those who truly master this archetype understand that true power lies not in control, but in perception, seeing the currents before they rise, understanding the patterns before they manifest. And yet, despite his distance from authority, the magician's influence is inescapable. He shapes the course of history without standing in its spotlight, altering the destinies of rulers while remaining just beyond their reach. As we move forward, we must ask, if the magician does not seek power, what then is his ultimate purpose? What drives his relentless pursuit of knowledge, if not ambition or control? The answer lies in something deeper, something far older than kings and kingdoms. The magician's path is not one of rule, but of transformation. Throughout history, there has been one pursuit that defines the magician more than any other: the search for knowledge that lies beyond the reach of ordinary understanding. His is not the wisdom of the scholar, who learns within the accepted boundaries of knowledge, nor of the priest, who follows sacred doctrines without question. The magician's path is one of relentless inquiry, one that leads him beyond the accepted boundaries of knowledge. He is drawn to the hidden, the forbidden, not for the sake of rebellion, but because true transformation often lies in the truths that society fears to confront. This pursuit often comes at a cost. Knowledge, in its rawest form, is dangerous. There are secrets that disrupt order, revelations that unmake civilizations, and truths that fracture the very identity of those who uncover them. The magician is both fearless and reckless in his quest, stepping beyond the limits imposed by law, religion, or even sanity. He walks the fine edge between enlightenment and self-destruction, between illumination and madness. Ancient myths reflect this paradox time and again. Prometheus stole fire from the gods, gifting humanity with light and progress, yet suffered eternal torment for his defiance. The biblical tale of Adam and Eve portrays the knowledge of good and evil as both liberation and a curse. To eat from the forbidden tree is to gain awareness, but also to lose paradise. The Gnostic tradition speaks of divine wisdom hidden from humanity by jealous gods, knowledge that, if reclaimed, would elevate mankind beyond its mortal limitations. But what does the magician truly seek? What lies at the heart of his relentless quest? Some might say power, the ability to reshape the world through the mastery of hidden forces. Others might argue it is understanding, the need to pierce the veil of illusion and perceive reality in its true form. Yet, in many cases, the magician himself does not know. His desire for knowledge is instinctual, an impulse beyond reason, a hunger that compels him forward even when the destination remains uncertain. In history, the magician has taken many forms. The alchemists of the Renaissance sought to transmute base metals into gold, but their true ambition was far greater. The quest for the philosopher's stone, a mythical substance that granted enlightenment, longevity, and ultimate wisdom. Figures like Paracelsus and Agrippa blurred the line between science and sorcery, their studies blending chemistry, medicine, astrology, and esoteric mysticism. Their work laid the groundwork for modern scientific thought, yet they were feared and persecuted for daring to challenge the established order. Others, like John Dee, sought knowledge through the invocation of otherworldly forces. Dee, a renowned scholar and mathematician, claimed to have conversed with angels, recording their messages in the cryptic language of Enochian script. His ambitions were boundless. He envisioned a vast empire guided by divine wisdom, an earthly reflection of celestial order. Yet, like so many before him, his pursuit of hidden knowledge led to exile, obscurity, and the loss of everything he had built. The theme repeats endlessly. The magician's pursuit of knowledge inevitably brings him to the brink of ruin. He gazes into the abyss, and more often than not, the abyss gazes back. Faust, perhaps the most famous magician of all, makes a pact with the devil himself, exchanging his soul for limitless knowledge, only to find that such power leads not to fulfillment, but to despair. His story is a warning, a reminder that knowledge without wisdom is a curse, and that the pursuit of the infinite can consume those who fail to understand its limits. Yet, despite these warnings, the magician persists. He is not deterred by risk, nor swayed by fear. He moves forward, compelled by something beyond reason, a belief that the unknown holds something essential, something worth any cost. But how does one distinguish between enlightenment and folly? Between the wisdom of the magician and the madness of the fool? The answer lies in intention. Those who seek knowledge for its own sake, without a guiding principle, often find themselves lost in an endless labyrinth of half-truths and illusions. But those who approach wisdom with purpose, with discipline, with an understanding of the balance between knowledge and responsibility, these are the magicians who transcend rather than fall. This is the test that all seekers must face. The lure of forbidden knowledge is intoxicating, but it is not an end in itself. The true magician does not merely collect knowledge, he understands its purpose. He recognizes that what is hidden is not always meant to be revealed, that wisdom is more than accumulation, and that knowledge, wielded without care, can become a force of devastation. Yet, if he passes this trial, if he can walk the path of the unknown without losing himself, he will reach something beyond power, beyond understanding. He will grasp the ability to transform reality itself. But what does it mean to transform? What is the magician's true role in shaping the world around him? This is where his journey shifts, from the seeker of knowledge to the master of transformation. To the magician, knowledge is not an artifact to be preserved. It is an instrument of transformation. It does not exist to be hoarded, but to be wielded. Its purpose not to collect, but to catalyze. The magician does not merely observe the world. He reshapes it, revealing its hidden structures and unlocking new possibilities. If the previous stage of the magician's journey was marked by the pursuit of hidden knowledge, then this stage is defined by his ability to wield that knowledge as a tool of transformation. But transformation is not a simple process. It is not a matter of knowing secrets or reciting incantations. It is a profound alchemy, one that extends beyond the material and into the very fabric of consciousness. The magician is not merely a collector of wisdom. He is a conduit for change. His role is to transmute, to elevate, to take what is base and reveal its higher form. Alchemy, both literal and symbolic, offers one of the clearest depictions of this transformative process. While popular culture often associates alchemy with the fabled quest to turn lead into gold, Its true essence is far deeper. The alchemical texts of the medieval and Renaissance periods were filled with cryptic symbols and elaborate metaphors, describing not just physical transmutation, but the metamorphosis of the self. The magnum opus, the great work of the alchemists, was not simply about refining metals, it was about refining the soul. Jung saw in alchemy a powerful psychological truth. He recognized that the magician's path was not about changing the external world alone. It was about transforming the self from within. The alchemical process mirrored individuation, the journey toward wholeness. The lead of unformed potential must first be broken down, purified and reforged into something greater. The magician, like the alchemist, does not fear destruction, for he understands that all transformation begins with dissolution. This principle can be found across myths and traditions. The Hermetic tradition, named after Hermes Trismegistus, the fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth, teaches that the material and the spiritual are intertwined. As above, so below, states the Emerald Tablet, emphasizing that transformation at one level of reality will inevitably affect another. To the magician, this is not a mere aphorism, it is a guiding law. Consider Merlin, the legendary sorcerer of Arthurian myth. He is not merely a figure of knowledge, he is an orchestrator of transformation. He does not seek power for its own sake, nor does he impose change forcefully. Instead, he subtly shifts the world around him, shaping destiny through wisdom rather than brute force. It is Merlin who prepares Arthur for kingship, who facilitates the trials that will test and refine him. His magic is not a tool of domination, but of revelation. He unveils hidden truths, allowing others to grow into their fullest selves. This is the core of the magician's power, to reveal what is hidden, to unlock potential, to transform not just objects, but minds, identities, and even the nature of reality itself. But transformation is never without risk. The magician who fails to master his own process of transformation becomes something else entirely, a manipulator rather than a guide. In many myths, this figure is represented by the sorcerer who distorts rather than elevates, who seeks control rather than wisdom. He is the dark alchemist, not refining lead into gold, but corrupting the pure into poison. This archetype appears across cultures. In the Faustian legend, the pursuit of knowledge without wisdom leads to self-destruction. Faust, rather than refining his soul, surrenders it. His transformation is not an ascent, but a descent, an unraveling rather than an elevation. He becomes a cautionary tale, a warning that transformation without balance leads to ruin. And so, the true magician must walk a careful path. He must recognize that change is neither inherently good nor evil. It is a force, one that must be wielded with awareness and responsibility. He must refine not only his external reality, but his own mind and spirit, ensuring that his power serves something greater than his ego. This is why, in many traditions, the magician is closely tied to initiation rituals. Across the ancient world, those who sought the secrets of transformation were required to undergo profound trials before they could wield magic. The Egyptian priesthood demanded years of study and discipline before initiates could access sacred knowledge. The mystery schools of ancient Greece subjected their students to elaborate rites, ensuring that wisdom was earned rather than given freely. Even in shamanic traditions, the path to becoming a healer was marked by suffering and vision quests, where the initiate had to confront the depths of their own being before they could transform others. The lesson is clear. Transformation begins with the self. The magician who seeks to reshape the world must first undergo his own death and rebirth. He must be willing to break himself apart, to dissolve his own illusions, to refine his mind and spirit until he is no longer bound by the limitations of ordinary perception. And when he emerges from this process, when he has passed through the crucible of transformation, he becomes something far greater than a mere sorcerer. He becomes a true wielder of the hidden forces that shape existence. But where does this transformation lead? If the magician has moved beyond mere knowledge, if he has mastered the art of reshaping both himself and the world, what comes next? The answer lies in his greatest challenge yet, the responsibility of wielding power. Mastery over transformation does not grant the magician freedom from consequence. If anything, it burdens him with an even greater weight, the weight of responsibility. Power, even in the hands of the wise, is never neutral. It demands direction, intention, and discipline. Without these, it warps, distorts, and ultimately consumes the one who wields it. History, mythology, and psychology all caution against the unchecked use of power. The magician stands at a precipice. On one side, the path of wisdom, where his knowledge is used to uplift, heal, and illuminate. On the other, the descent into corruption, where mastery turns to manipulation, and the desire for control overrides the pursuit of truth. This precarious balance is reflected in some of the most enduring myths of human civilization. In the Arthurian legends, Merlin's wisdom shapes the destiny of Camelot, yet even he cannot prevent its fall. His magic, once a guiding force, is ultimately subsumed by forces beyond his control. In some versions of the tale, he is tricked by Nimue, bound by his own enchantments, and rendered powerless, a poignant reminder that even the greatest magicians can be undone by their own knowledge. A similar struggle unfolds in the story of Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and magic. As the scribe of the gods, Thoth embodies balance, ensuring that knowledge does not tip the scales too far in either direction. Yet, in later interpretations, he becomes associated with forbidden wisdom, his teachings locked away in sacred texts that only the worthy may access. This theme, the restriction of knowledge to prevent its misuse, appears repeatedly throughout history. Those who wield great power must decide not only how to use it, but whether some knowledge is too dangerous to share. This dilemma is deeply psychological. Jungian thought suggests that the magician archetype, when unchecked, becomes the inflated sage, a figure so consumed by his own intellect that he loses sight of his limitations. He mistakes his insights for omniscience, his intuition for infallibility. And when this happens, he ceases to be a force of transformation and becomes instead a figure of tyranny, one who dictates rather than teaches, who enforces rather than enlightens. We see this descent in figures such as Faust, the scholar who barters his soul for ultimate knowledge, only to realize too late that power without wisdom leads to ruin. His downfall is not due to ignorance, but arrogance, the belief that he can control forces far greater than himself. This cautionary tale speaks to a universal truth. Those who believe themselves immune to corruption are often the first to fall. But what does this mean for the modern magician? How does one wield knowledge and influence without succumbing to the same fate? The answer lies in discipline and self-awareness. A true magician understands that power must always be counterbalanced by restraint. He does not seek dominion over others, but rather mastery over himself. His responsibility is not to dictate reality, but to illuminate it, allowing others to perceive the truths they are ready to see. This is why, in many ancient traditions, those who sought esoteric knowledge were subjected to rigorous trials before they were deemed worthy. In the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, initiates were required to undergo periods of intense purification, mental, physical, and spiritual, before they were entrusted with sacred wisdom. The magician's burden was never meant to be carried lightly, and yet there is another danger, the fear of one's own power. Just as some are tempted to wield magic recklessly, others shrink from it entirely. The magician who denies his gifts, who suppresses his knowledge for fear of its consequences, also falls into imbalance. He becomes a passive observer, allowing ignorance to flourish where wisdom is needed. To reject responsibility is no different than to abuse it. The result is the same, a world deprived of its potential for transformation. Thus, the magician must walk the narrowest of paths. He must be neither a tyrant nor a recluse, neither an enforcer nor a bystander. He must act but with wisdom. He must guide but without force. He must embrace his power, but never for the sake of power itself. This is the burden he carries, And it is this burden that separates the true magician from the charlatan, the visionary from the deceiver. Yet the magician's journey is far from over. If he can navigate the perils of power and responsibility, he must still face his greatest challenge yet: the reconciliation of the material and the spiritual. The magician exists at the threshold between two realities: the tangible world, governed by physical laws, and the unseen realm, where symbols, intuition, and hidden forces shape existence. His task is neither to dwell solely in one, nor to abandon the other, but to act as a bridge, a conduit between what is known and what lies beyond perception. Throughout history, the magician has embodied this duality. In ancient Egypt, Thoth was not merely the god of writing and wisdom, but also the mediator between the divine and mortal worlds. He recorded the judgments of souls, dictated the structure of language, and revealed the mysteries of the cosmos through sacred texts. His power was not in choosing sides, but in understanding both realms and weaving them together into a coherent whole. The same principle is found in Hermes, the Greek messenger of the gods, and later in Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary figure who merged Greek and Egyptian wisdom into what would become Hermeticism. The famous axiom, "as above, so below," reflects the magician's ultimate insight: the recognition that the microcosm and macrocosm mirror each other, that the forces at play in the heavens are reflected in the depths of the human psyche. But what does this mean for the individual seeking to integrate the magician archetype today? It means cultivating a perception that extends beyond the surface of things. The magician is not deceived by appearances. He looks deeper, sensing the underlying currents that shape events. To navigate life as a magician is to perceive not just what is, but what is becoming. This is where psychology and esotericism intersect. Jung described the magician as the archetype of transformation, the force that brings unconscious material into awareness. He saw in alchemy a metaphor for inner development, the process by which the chaotic, unrefined aspects of the psyche are transmuted into something greater. The alchemist's quest for the philosopher's stone was not merely a search for gold, but a symbol of self-realization, of uniting the fragmented parts of the self into a cohesive whole. The magician's ability to bridge worlds is also evident in his mastery over symbols. Symbols, after all, are the language of the unseen. They hold meaning beyond words, acting as portals to deeper understanding. This is why the magician is often associated with divination, not as a tool for predicting the future, but as a means of unlocking hidden patterns. Tarot, astrology, and the I Ching do not determine fate. They reveal the currents beneath the surface, allowing the seeker to navigate life with greater awareness. Yet the magician is not merely an interpreter of symbols. He is also a creator. Just as he deciphers reality, he also reshapes it. This is why magic and art have always been deeply intertwined. Whether through poetry, painting, or music, the magician's influence is found wherever reality is transformed by human intention. Art, at its highest level, is alchemy. It takes the raw material of human experience and transmutes it into something timeless, something that transcends the ordinary. In mythology, this ability to weave realities is often represented through the trickster aspect of the magician. Loki, Coyote, and Anansi, these figures are not merely pranksters, but disruptors of perception. They remind us that reality is not fixed, that meaning is fluid, and that sometimes wisdom is found in the most unexpected places. But the magician's gift of seeing beyond illusions comes with a challenge. How does one live in a world bound by material constraints while maintaining a connection to the unseen? This is the eternal paradox of the magician. Many who awaken to deeper realities find themselves alienated, unable to reconcile their insights with the structures of everyday life. Some retreat, choosing solitude over engagement. Others attempt to impose their vision upon the world, forgetting that wisdom must be shared, not enforced. Both extremes, withdrawal and control, are forms of imbalance. The true magician walks a different path. He does not reject the material world, nor does he become lost in abstraction. Instead, he integrates both, using his knowledge to guide, to inspire, and to bring clarity where there is confusion. This is why in many traditions, the magician is also a teacher. He does not hoard knowledge but transmits it, ensuring that the bridge between worlds remains open for those who seek it. This role is not about dictating truth, but about awakening others to their own capacity for insight. In practical terms, the magician's way of being can manifest in various forms. The philosopher, who challenges assumptions and reveals deeper truths. The scientist who explores the hidden structures of the universe. The artist who reshapes perception through creativity. The therapist who guides others toward self-awareness. The mentor who passes on wisdom so that others may forge their own path. Each of these figures plays a role in bridging the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknown. Thus, the magician's power is not in escaping reality, but in revealing its hidden layers. He moves between realms not as a fugitive, but as a messenger, bringing back the wisdom necessary for transformation. Yet this journey comes with its own dangers. To walk between worlds is to risk losing oneself, to become untethered, disconnected from both the mundane and the mystical. And so the magician must learn one final lesson: how to return. The next step in his journey is the act of grounding his wisdom, of taking all he has learned, and bringing it back to the world in a way that is meaningful, practical, and enduring. Because knowledge, if not shared, remains incomplete. To walk the path of the magician is to confront a dilemma. How does one translate wisdom into action? Knowledge, in isolation, remains an abstraction, a series of insights floating untethered in the mind. But true mastery lies not in accumulating knowledge, but in embodying it, shaping reality through intentional action. The magician's journey is incomplete until he returns to the world, not as an observer, but as a participant. He does not remain a hermit in his tower of wisdom, nor does he retreat into endless contemplation. Instead, he steps forward, applying his knowledge to shape the world around him. This phase of the journey is represented across mythology. In the Arthurian legends, Merlin does not merely advise Arthur from the shadows, he shapes the course of the kingdom. In Egyptian tradition, Thoth's wisdom is not locked away, but shared, forming the very foundation of language, law, and understanding. Even in modern storytelling, the magician figure often moves from a place of study to one of impact. Yet the transition from knowing to doing is fraught with challenges. How does the magician ensure that his wisdom does not become corrupted by power? How does he remain true to his insights without becoming detached from reality? The answer lies in the delicate balance between vision and humility. The danger of knowledge is that it can lead to intellectual isolation, a belief that one sees more clearly than others, that wisdom elevates the self above those who remain in the dark. But the true magician understands that knowledge is not a weapon, nor a throne from which to rule. It is a responsibility. To integrate the magician archetype in the real world is to embrace service over dominance, guidance over control. The magician does not impose his insights but creates conditions where others may see for themselves. This is the core difference between the magician and the manipulator. The manipulator hoards knowledge, using it to deceive, control, and obscure. The magician, in contrast, illuminates, clarifies, and empowers. He does not force his wisdom upon the world, but acts as a catalyst, igniting awareness in others. The magician's ability to manifest knowledge in the material world is not limited to one domain. Across history, we see this archetype emerge in scientists, philosophers, artists, and leaders who bring forth insights that alter the course of civilization. Consider Leonardo da Vinci, whose mind bridged the realms of art, science, and invention. His notebooks reveal a mind unshackled by conventional thinking. He saw beyond the present, envisioning technologies centuries ahead of his time. Yet, he did not merely dream. He built, painted, and tested. His knowledge became form. Or take Nikola Tesla, whose understanding of energy and electromagnetism shaped the modern world. Tesla was not merely a theorist. He was a creator, channeling unseen forces into tangible innovation. The magician is not bound to any single tradition or field. Wherever transformation occurs, whether in science, philosophy, art, or politics, his hand is present. His power lies in seeing beyond immediate limitations, in reshaping the invisible into the visible. Yet, for every magician who brings light, there is another who becomes lost in his own illusions. The pursuit of knowledge, when untethered from ethics, can lead to catastrophe. History is filled with figures whose brilliance was overshadowed by hubris. The same power that creates can also destroy. This is the lesson of Dr. Faustus, the archetypal sorcerer who trades his soul for ultimate knowledge, only to be consumed by it. It is the tale of the sorcerer's apprentice, who calls forth forces he cannot control. It is the warning found in every myth where a seeker of hidden truths becomes lost in their own ambition. Thus, the magician must temper his power with wisdom. He must understand that knowledge is a tool, not an end in itself. It is not enough to know the mysteries of the universe. One must also know when to act, when to step back, and when to allow others to find their own path. To fully embody the magician's path, one must integrate the shadow side of knowledge. The temptation to manipulate, the lure of superiority, the intoxication of control. Jung warned that unintegrated magician energy can manifest as detachment from emotion, a tendency to intellectualize rather than engage, to observe rather than participate. This is the danger of becoming a figure lost in analysis, disconnected from the very world one seeks to understand. The ethical magician, however, maintains connection. He recognizes that wisdom is not hoarded. It is shared, adapted, and passed down. He does not seek followers, but fellow seekers. This is why the archetype so often emerges in the role of mentor, teacher, or guide. The magician does not seek control over others, but helps them awaken their own potential. In practical terms, this means acting with integrity, ensuring that knowledge is used for growth rather than deception, balancing intellect with intuition, logic with empathy, recognizing that wisdom is an ongoing journey, not a final destination, avoiding the trap of seeing oneself as superior due to knowledge, remaining humble in the face of the unknown. Ultimately, the magician's return to the world is not merely about applying knowledge, but about creating meaning. He understands that the world is not shaped by knowledge alone. It is shaped by stories, by symbols, by the shared myths that define civilizations. The greatest magicians of history have not only understood reality, but have reshaped it through the narratives they introduced. Carl Jung's theories of the unconscious changed psychology forever, revealing the hidden forces that shape human thought. Einstein's insights into relativity altered our perception of time and space. Philosophers like Plato, Nietzsche, and Laozi reshaped how we understand existence itself. Each of these figures did not simply accumulate knowledge. They transformed it into something that could be understood, experienced, and lived. This is the magician's highest form of mastery: to take the ineffable, the hidden, the abstract, and give it form, whether through words, art, discovery, or wisdom passed from one mind to another. And so, the journey is complete. The magician has ventured into the unknown, uncovered the hidden truths, and now stands at the threshold of reality, prepared to weave his insights into the fabric of existence. He is no longer just a seeker, he is a creator, and in that act of creation, the cycle begins anew. The magician walks a precarious path. At his highest, he is a bringer of wisdom, a guide toward transformation, a force that bridges the spiritual and material worlds. But when his power is untethered from wisdom, when knowledge is pursued for its own sake, without regard for morality, the magician becomes something else entirely. This is the shadow magician, the one who seeks control rather than enlightenment, who wields knowledge not as a light, but as a weapon. In mythology, history, and psychology, we see this figure emerge time and time again. The seer who becomes blind with arrogance, the master of hidden truths who bends reality to serve his own ego. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the danger of unintegrated magician energy, warning that unchecked intellect can turn cold, detached, and even destructive. The shadow magician's greatest deception is not against others, but against himself. Believing he alone possesses the keys to reality, he mistakes his knowledge for infallibility. He does not illuminate, he obscures. He does not guide, he controls. His downfall is not ignorance, but arrogance, the certainty that he alone understands what others cannot. His knowledge, once a source of illumination, is turned into a means of manipulation. This is the corruption of the magician archetype, the moment when the pursuit of wisdom mutates into the pursuit of power. Throughout myth and legend, the shadow magician takes many forms. Perhaps the most famous is Dr. Faustus, the scholar who, dissatisfied with human knowledge, makes a deal with the devil for unlimited wisdom. But the contract he signs is not simply an agreement, it is a surrender. By seeking mastery over reality without understanding the responsibility that comes with it, Faustus damns himself, not because of the knowledge he gains, but because of what he is willing to sacrifice to obtain it. This is the great warning at the heart of the magician's shadow. When knowledge becomes an end in itself, rather than a tool for growth, it can devour the one who wields it. We see this reflected in the archetype of the dark alchemist, the sorcerer obsessed with transmutation, not for enlightenment but for material gain. Figures like John Dee, the court magician of Queen Elizabeth I, and Aleister Crowley, who declared himself the prophet of a new occult age, flirted with the boundaries between enlightenment and ego-driven power. Both sought to manipulate the hidden forces of reality, but at what cost? Even in modern narratives, the shadow magician persists. Think of Palpatine in Star Wars, the Sith Lord who hoards knowledge to keep himself in power, or Ozymandias in Watchmen, who believes his intellect grants him the right to reshape the world at any cost. Each of these figures represents a mind that has untethered itself from ethical grounding, that sees people as mere pieces on a chessboard, their suffering irrelevant in the grander pursuit of higher knowledge. The shadow magician does not believe in the limitations of morality. He justifies any action with the excuse of enlightenment. They do not understand, he says. If only they could see what I see, they would accept their place. And therein lies the abyss. Jung's concept of the shadow is vital here. The shadow magician does not emerge from nowhere. He is a distortion of the true magician archetype. He is what happens when a seeker of wisdom fails to integrate his own darkness, when he refuses to acknowledge that knowledge alone does not make one wise. One of the most insidious ways the shadow magician manifests in the psyche is through intellectual arrogance. This is the tendency to believe that one's intelligence is sufficient to justify any action, that understanding something at a theoretical level excuses a lack of compassion or ethical responsibility. This is seen in the detached scientist, the manipulative philosopher, the leader who believes that because he understands human nature, he is entitled to shape it. Jung warned that those who deny their own darkness are most susceptible to it. The shadow magician does not believe himself to be evil. He believes himself to be above such concepts. Though we often associate the shadow magician with ancient figures, dark sorcerers, cult leaders, and mythological deceivers, his presence in modern society is undeniable. In politics, we see him in authoritarian figures who manipulate history to maintain control, distorting truth to keep the masses ignorant. In corporate power, he takes the form of CEOs who prioritize profit over humanity, who see people as numbers, who use their mastery of systems to exploit rather than uplift. In media, he appears as the architects of mass persuasion, those who understand psychology deeply enough to bend public perception, who dictate reality through narratives designed to control. And in each of these cases, the defining characteristic of the shadow magician is not merely knowledge, but the deliberate misuse of it. This is the dark side of power, the ability to manipulate truth itself. There is another great danger that comes with the shadow magician's path. He cannot stop. Unlike the true magician, who seeks wisdom as a means of enlightenment, the shadow magician is never satisfied. He is not seeking truth, he is seeking control. And control is never enough. This is why so many figures who fall into this archetype descend into paranoia. The more power they gain, the more they fear losing it. The more they manipulate reality, the more they must continue distorting it. They become trapped in their own illusions. Consider the historical examples of leaders who consolidated power through deception, figures who rewrote history, censored information, destroyed those who questioned them. What begins as a manipulation of reality eventually becomes a fear of reality itself. The shadow magician, at his extreme, ceases to be the master of his knowledge and instead becomes its prisoner. Is there a way back? For those who find themselves veering toward the shadow magician's path, whether in intellectual arrogance, the pursuit of control, or the temptation to use knowledge as a weapon, the answer lies in integration. Jung proposed that we do not conquer the shadow by rejecting it. We transform it by understanding it. This means acknowledging that wisdom is not the same as superiority, that knowledge does not justify cruelty, that the pursuit of truth must be guided by ethics, not ego. The redeemed magician does not suppress his shadow, but he does not serve it either. He integrates his intellect with his humanity, recognizing that true wisdom is not about control, but connection. At every moment, the magician stands at a crossroads. He can use knowledge to illuminate, or to deceive. He can share wisdom, or hoard it. He can guide others toward self-discovery, or keep them in ignorance to maintain power. The true magician chooses wisely, for in the end, the greatest power is not knowledge itself, but the wisdom to use it well. Throughout history, the figure of the magician has been both feared and revered. He is the custodian of hidden wisdom, the manipulator of unseen forces, and the architect of transformation. But his journey does not end at mere knowledge. It extends toward something deeper. Alchemical transmutation, both of the world and the self. The final stage of the magician's path is not mastery over others, nor the accumulation of arcane secrets, but rather the pursuit of wholeness. This is where the magician moves beyond intellectual prowess and into a greater, more profound realization, one that transcends power and touches upon something eternal. This is alchemy, not as the primitive quest for turning lead into gold, but as the sacred process of inner transformation. To understand this final stage, we must explore how alchemy, psychology, and myth converge in the figure of the enlightened magician, one who does not seek to rule, but to integrate. Alchemy has long been misunderstood as nothing more than a rudimentary science, a precursor to chemistry, concerned with the literal transmutation of base metals into gold. But beneath the surface, alchemy was always a spiritual discipline. Carl Jung recognized this, arguing that the ancient alchemists were not just experimenting with physical substances, they were projecting the transformation of their own souls into their work. The alchemical texts were filled with cryptic symbolism, coded references to psychological states, and depictions of processes that mirrored the individuation journey, the path towards psychic wholeness. The stages of alchemical transformation were not just about refining materials, but refining the self. Nigredo, blackening, the breakdown of the old self. Before transformation can begin, the old self must dissolve. This is the stage of confronting the unconscious, of descending into the depths where the magician must face his own illusions. Albedo, whitening, purification and reflection. The ashes of destruction give way to purification. This is the moment of self-awareness, where the magician begins to separate truth from deception, allowing his inner contradictions to rise to the surface. Citrinitas, yellowing, illumination and integration. Here, wisdom emerges. The magician does not simply acquire knowledge, he integrates it into his being. He understands that his power is not in domination, but in alignment with the greater forces of nature and the psyche. Rubedo, reddening, the birth of the philosopher's stone. The final stage, the union of opposites, the realization of wholeness. The magician no longer seeks outside himself for meaning. He becomes the gold he once pursued. He is the philosopher's stone. Each of these steps mirrors not only alchemical transformation, but the psychological journey of self-realization. The magician who reaches this stage has moved beyond the mere accumulation of wisdom. He has become it. Unlike the shadow magician, who seeks control over reality, the enlightened magician understands that true mastery comes not from manipulation, but from alignment. This is why the magician archetype has always been depicted as a liminal figure, a wanderer between realms, moving fluidly between the known and unknown, the conscious and unconscious, the sacred and the profane. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, traverses between Olympus and the underworld, embodying the connection between divine knowledge and mortal existence. Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, is the mediator of truth, the keeper of sacred texts, the force that ensures balance in the cosmic order. Merlin, the ever-elusive sage, weaves in and out of Arthurian legend, appearing when wisdom is needed, disappearing when his presence would create dependency. What unites these figures is their understanding of duality. They do not reject the material world in favor of the spiritual, nor do they immerse themselves so deeply in the material that they forget the unseen. They exist between these two realms, embracing both. This too is the magician's task in the modern world. Jung's concept of individuation closely mirrors the magician's transformation. This is the process of integrating the unconscious into the conscious mind, of embracing all aspects of the self, including the shadow. For the magician, this means moving beyond mere intellect and into embodied wisdom. It is not enough to understand transformation intellectually. One must live it. In practical terms, this means moving beyond intellectual detachment. True wisdom is not about cold observation. It is about engagement with life, balancing knowledge with action. The magician must not only know but also do, embracing the shadow without being consumed by it. The truly integrated magician does not suppress his darkness, nor does he allow it to control him. He learns from it. Through this process, the magician moves beyond being a seeker and becomes a guide. He does not merely hold knowledge, he shares it. In the final stage of the magician's journey, something profound happens. He lets go. The need to accumulate, to prove, to dominate, all of it dissolves. What remains is the simple, quiet presence of wisdom itself. This is why, in so many myths, the magician vanishes when his work is done. Gandalf disappears into the west. Merlin is lost to the forests. Thoth remains in the background, recording history, never interfering. They do not cling to power because they understand the cycle. The magician teaches, then allows the world to unfold as it must. He does not impose himself upon it because he understands the universal law. Wisdom is not possession, it is flow. To embody the magician archetype is to understand that transformation is endless. The world is always shifting. Knowledge is always evolving. The self is always in motion. But the magician does not resist this. He does not grasp at permanence, nor does he despair at impermanence. Instead, he steps forward, one foot in the realm of the known, the other in the mystery of the unknown. He is not bound by what he has learned. He is free because of it. And so the journey continues. At the heart of every myth, hidden within ancient manuscripts encoded in the symbols of esoteric traditions, lies the figure of the magician, not as a mere wielder of supernatural forces, but as a reflection of something far more profound. The eternal seeker, the bridge between knowledge and mystery, the one who understands that transformation is the essence of existence. The journey of the magician is not about acquiring power. It is about understanding power, not about possessing wisdom, but about embodying it. Throughout history, societies have oscillated between revering and fearing the magician. He has been the sage, the prophet, the alchemist, and the heretic. He has been sought after for guidance and hunted down as a threat. And yet, no matter how many times institutions have tried to suppress this archetype, it always returns. Because the magician is not merely a historical figure, but a psychological reality. Today, the magician's wisdom is more necessary than ever. We live in an age saturated with information, yet starved for wisdom. Technology has given us access to limitless knowledge, but has it made us wiser? Science has expanded our understanding of the universe, yet we still struggle with the fundamental mysteries of existence. In a world where reality is increasingly shaped by illusion, distraction, and manipulation, the ability to discern truth from deception has become a necessity. This is where the magician's final lesson emerges. To walk the magician's path today means learning to see through illusion, whether external or self-imposed. Cultivating a mind that is both rational and intuitive, analytical yet open to the unknown. Understanding that knowledge, when hoarded, becomes sterile, but when shared, becomes transformational. The magician's final realization is humility. He knows that knowledge is never complete, that understanding is never final, and that the moment one believes they have mastered reality is the moment they become blind to its deeper truths. In every legend, there comes a moment when the magician faces a choice: to use his knowledge for control, bending reality to his will, or to serve something greater than himself, acting not as a ruler but as a guide. This is why the greatest magicians in mythology are not the ones who accumulate the most power, but the ones who learn when to step away. Merlin disappears into the mist. Gandalf sails into the west. Thoth watches from the edges of history. They do not impose themselves upon the world because they understand a deeper truth. Knowledge is not meant to enslave, but to liberate. And so the magician's journey does not end with dominion, but with transcendence. He does not cling to control. He releases it. Now, the magician archetype is not just a story from the past. It is alive in you. Every time you seek truth instead of mere comfort, every time you question instead of blindly accept, every time you explore the unknown instead of clinging to certainty, you are invoking the magician within. But the question remains: what will you do with that knowledge? Will you hoard it for your own gain? Will you let it consume you, turning into arrogance? Or will you use it to illuminate, to transform, not only yourself, but the world around you? This is the challenge the magician presents to all who seek wisdom. Will you become a prisoner of what you know, or will you use it to step into the unknown? The answer, as always, lies within. If this exploration has made you think, if it has challenged your perspective, then continue the journey with us. Like this video to help others find it. Comment below. Have you ever experienced a moment of deep insight, a realization that changed how you see the world? Subscribe and turn on notifications. We explore the hidden patterns of myth, psychology, and the human mind every week. And remember, the greatest illusion is certainty itself, the belief that the journey is complete, that there is nothing left to uncover. The magician understands that the path never ends, because reality is not a destination. It is a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Until next time.